Welcome to the concrete jungle, where dreams are made of and apparently money is spent just as fast. New York City, the city that never sleeps, but might keep you up at night stressing over rent. The question is stark, and for millions, it's a terrifying reality. Can you survive on a minimum wage in NYC in 2025? The official minimum wage for NYC and its surrounding counties is set to climb to $16.50 per hour on January 1st, 2025. That sounds like a decent raise to some, but in a city where the cost of living index is a staggering 172.5, meaning it's over 72% more expensive than the national average, the math tells a different story. This isn't just a budget breakdown. It's a deep dive into the harsh economic realities, the trade-offs, the hustle, and the sheer grit required to make a life, not just a living, in one of the world's most expensive cities. The harsh reality of minimum wage earnings. The annual income breakdown. Let's start with the hard numbers. The minimum wage in New York City for 2025 is $16.50 per hour. Assuming a standard full-time work week of 40 hours and a full 52 weeks in a year, a minimum wage worker's gross annual income will be $16.50 times 40 hours / week times 52 weeks / year equals $34,320. That's the gross income, the amount before the government takes its share. New York is a high-tax state with local taxes on top of federal. For a single filer, an income of $34,320 falls into multiple tax brackets for federal, state, and city income taxes, along with deductions for FICA, Social Security, and Medicare. After calculating federal, state, and local income taxes plus payroll taxes, a rough estimate shows that a minimum wage worker in NYC could face an overall effective tax rate of approximately 15% to 20%, perhaps higher depending on specific deductions and credits. Let's use a conservative effective deduction of 18% for a rough estimation. That means $34. 320 times 0.18 equals $6. 177.60 in annual deductions, leaving a net annual income of approximately $28,142.40. Dividing that by 12 months, the monthly take-home pay is around $2,345.20. This is the total war chest a minimum wage worker has to fight the monstrous cost of living in NYC. The true test of survival starts now. The unstoppable behemoth. Housing costs in NYC. If the minimum wage is a starting line, housing costs are a brick wall standing directly in the way. It's the single most significant factor that makes survival on this income nearly impossible. The generally accepted financial rule is that housing should not exceed 30% of one's gross income. For our minimum wage earner, 30% of the gross monthly income is $858, $34. 320/12 equals $2. 860 gross monthly times 0.30. Find an apartment in New York City for $858 a month. It's not just difficult. It's practically a fantasy. The true cost of rent. Let's look at the actual market data for 2025. The average rent for a studio apartment in New York City is skyrocketing, with estimates ranging widely, but landing around the $3,275 to $4,187 per month mark. Even looking at the more affordable boroughs like the Bronx, studio rents can average around $1,825 per month, and that's often in neighborhoods with significantly longer commutes and less access to certain amenities. Even in the cheaper neighborhoods like Washington Heights, average rents are still around $2,644 a month. To secure one of the absolute cheapest housing options, a shared room in a multi-bedroom apartment, far outside of Manhattan, a worker might still be looking at a minimum of $800 to $1,200 per month. Let's assume the absolute hyper-budget conscious low end, a shared room in an outer borough for $950 a month. This is already 40.5% of the net monthly income of $2,345.20, crushing the recommended 30% limit. This single expense alone has consumed nearly half of their paycheck. The reality is that the gap between a livable wage and the minimum wage, particularly in New York City, is largely defined by this housing crisis. To comfortably afford the median rent for a one-bedroom apartment in NYC, a person would need to earn over $90,000 annually, making the minimum wage earner's $34,320 gross income seem woefully inadequate. The daily budget battle. Essential living expenses, with rent taking a massive chunk. The remaining $1,395.20, net monthly income minus $950 rent, must cover every other essential cost. Transportation, getting to work. New York City's public transportation is a lifesaver, but it's not free. The current base fare for subways and local buses is around $2.90. The most cost-effective solution for a full-time worker is the unlimited 7-day fare cap, or soon, the Omni Tap-and-Go cap. The proposed fare cap is $36 per week, which translates to $144 per month, assuming 4 weeks, for unlimited subway and local bus travel. Since the MTA is delaying the planned increase to 2026, let's use the current weekly cap of $34, which is $136 a month. This is a non-negotiable expense for most minimum wage jobs that require a daily commute. Some workers might save a little by walking or biking, but for a city worker, $136 is a baseline. Food, more than just survival. Food is the next big variable. Eating out is prohibitively expensive, with a casual meal costing around $18 to $30. Survival on minimum wage demands relentless grocery shopping and cooking at home. Estimates for an individual's bare minimum grocery costs in NYC range from $300 to $500 per month, depending on diet and shopping savvy. Let's be ruthless and budget $350 per month for groceries, primarily focusing on rice, beans, pasta, and the most affordable cuts of meat and vegetables. This tight budget leaves no room for dining out delivery or even a daily coffee shop indulgence. Utilities and communication. Even a shared apartment has utility costs. These typically include electricity, gas, and internet/phone service. Estimates for a single person's utilities, electricity, heating, cooling, water, garbage, in NYC are around $150 to $250 per month, and a basic phone/internet plan adds another $70 to $100. Let's budget $180 for utilities and $60 for a no-frills mobile phone plan, totaling $240 per month. The grand total, a budgetary cliffhanger. Let's look at the basic expenses on an austere budget for a minimum wage earner. Net monthly income $2,345 midpoint. Rent, shared room/outer borough $950. Utilities, including Wi-Fi, split $180. Transportation, Metro card $136. Groceries, minimalist budget $350. Healthcare, minimal or subsidized $100. Phone/other basic services, $60. Total core expenses, $1,676. Subtracting the total minimum expenses from the net monthly income, $2, $345.20 minus $1, $676.00 equals $669.20 left over. That's $669.20 is the remaining budget for everything else. What does everything else include? Healthcare. Even with insurance copays and prescription costs can quickly chew through this. A trip to an urgent care can cost over $100. Clothing/personal care. Essential toiletries, new shoes for work, or a winter coat aren't cheap. Debt repayment. Student loans, credit card debt, or medical bills. Emergency funds/savings. The lack of any savings is the biggest vulnerability. A single emergency, a broken phone, an unexpected dental bill, or a minor injury can lead to instant financial ruin. Entertainment/social life. The New York experience, a movie ticket around $21, a beer $11, or even museum visit is largely inaccessible. Miscellaneous, laundry, household supplies, over-the-counter medications. The statistical squeeze. The minimum annual salary considered livable in NYC for a single person is frequently cited as being between $75,000 and $138,000 to cover all expenses and have a modest discretionary income. The minimum wage of $34,320 is less than 50% of the absolute lowest recommended livable salary. The cost of living index for housing alone in NYC is a staggering 224.3 compared to the national average of 100. The gap is massive, a $40,000 plus chasm of economic reality. The hidden costs and survival hacks. The survival story on a minimum wage in NYC is less about thriving and more about strategic deprivation and the relentless hustle. The cohabitation compromise. The key to keeping the budget in the black is aggressive cohabitation. Our budget assumes a shared room, which is a cornerstone of survival. Many workers are forced to live in highly undesirable, often illegal or dangerous living situations to push that rent number down even further. This often means living far out in the outer boroughs, requiring long 2-hour round-trip commutes that are physically and emotionally draining. The second job imperative. For many, a single 40-hour minimum wage job isn't enough. The necessity of a second part-time job or consistent overtime becomes a rule, not the exception. Working an extra 10 hours a week at minimum wage would add approximately $165 to the gross weekly income, or about $570 net per month. This is an extra 520 hours a year of work, severely cutting into rest, social life, and time for self-improvement or seeking better employment. The trade-off is exhausting, demanding 50-plus hour weeks just to slightly buffer the threadbare budget. The SNAP and assistance factor. Some minimum wage earners will qualify for federal or state assistance programs like SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, to help with food costs. If a worker qualifies for even a modest $150 in monthly SNAP benefits, that would free up a significant portion of the grocery budget, adding $150 to the discretionary $669.20. However, qualifying for and navigating these benefits is a hurdle in itself, involving complex bureaucratic processes that a busy, overworked person may struggle to manage. Relying on government assistance to make a minimum wage livable highlights the fundamental failure of the minimum wage to function as a living wage in a city like New York. The psychological toll and societal implications. The financial precarity of life on minimum wage in NYC extends far beyond the bank balance. The psychological toll is immense. The constant stress of being one paycheck or one emergency away from homelessness, the social isolation from having no budget for entertainment, and the physical exhaustion from long hours and commutes create a debilitating cycle. This system of economic survival reinforces the idea that the city's essential workers, the cleaners, the retail staff, the food service employees, must live on the economic margins to keep the city running for the wealthy. The high minimum wage of $16.50 in NYC is nearly double the federal minimum of $7.25, yet it still fails dramatically to meet the cost of living. This highlights the deepening geographical disparity in economic well-being across the United States. Cities like New York, San Francisco, and Boston require a drastically higher minimum wage than the national average, yet the incremental increases are quickly swallowed by inflation, particularly in the housing market. Conclusion: an impossible equation? Can one survive on a minimum wage in NYC in 2025? The cold, statistical answer is, technically yes, but only with extreme sacrifice and zero margin for error. It is a survival predicated on sharing a room, adhering to a strict, nearly joyless budget, eliminating all discretionary spending, and often working more than one full-time job. The net monthly income of $2,345.20 is simply not designed to meet the median cost of living, which for a single person, excluding rent, is estimated to be around $1,700 per month, leaving only $645.20 for all rent, housing, and other costs, which is demonstrably impossible given the average cost of shared room. The bare-bones budget we constructed, which leaves a mere $669.20 for all non-rent, non-transport, non-utility costs, illustrates a life of constant stress, not one of thriving. The economic challenge for the minimum wage earner in the city is not just to make ends meet, but to constantly outmaneuver a cost of living that is always several steps ahead, making the American dream of a stable, comfortable life in New York City an unattainable privilege for those on the lowest rungs of the economic ladder. The city's economic machinery is built on the back of these individuals, yet offers them no true path to financial security. The data is clear. To merely survive in the city in 2025, one must dedicate nearly all their time and resources to the bare necessities, leaving no room for a life worth living.